Okay, in this video, we're going to look really quickly at the basic parts of a neuron, so the anatomy of a neuron, and then I'm going to introduce the idea of resting membrane potential. So both of these ideas we're going to use in combination next class to look at the physiology of a neuron. A neuron is a highly specialized cell in the nervous system that transmits messages, sometimes they're called impulses, from one part of the body to the other. Now, neurons come in all different shapes and sizes, but they have some common features. And what we're going to be interested in is that they communicate with other neurons and target cells or tissues using electrical signals. I just want to go through the basic parts of a neuron. So a neuron is called a polarized cell because it's asymmetrical. So you can't like cut it in half and see the same thing on both sides. One feature I want to point out is the cell body. So the cell body is right here. And the cell body contains organelles that you learned about in biology class, like the nucleus, the endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, and all those sorts of things. So it contains the nucleus, which has the genetic information and a lot of the stuff that's essential for the neuron to survive. Now, when we talk about how a neuron communicates, the first thing that receives a signal is this structure here coming off of the cell body called a dendrite. Dendrites receive signals from other neurons and they convey information toward the cell body. So the dendrites are going to receive the signal and then they're going to convey an electrical signal towards the cell body and into the cell body. The axon is usually a singular structure protruding from the cell body, and it's generally speaking longer than the dendrites, although not always, as you'll see in a second. The axon sends signals away from the cell body. And this is the site of what we call an action potential. This is what we're going to spend the entire class talking about next time, our action potentials. So dendrites receive a signal from other cells or maybe from the environment. They send signals toward the cell body. The signal goes through the cell body and into the axon, and the axon will send an electrical signal away from the cell body. Eventually, that signal will reach what we call the axon terminal. And so there are multiple terminals coming off of an axon. And axon terminals are filled with small little vesicles. So those are little packets that contain neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are chemicals. And when the impulse or the message, the electrical signal, when the electrical signal reaches the axon terminal, these chemicals, these neurotransmitters, get released. And what's going to happen is there's going to be another neuron sitting here, and those neurotransmitters will then go to the dendrite of the next neuron. So these are the four major parts of a neuron that I want you to be familiar with: dendrites, the cell body, the axon, and the axon terminal. So I just want to give an example of how this might work. So this is a sensory signaling pathway, and this is the pathway that might be activated if you touch something hot. So if you touch something hot, then the dendrites are going to receive that painful heat signal. And they're going to conduct an electrical signal toward the cell body, which is right here. So the dendrites receive the signal, the electrical signal goes toward the cell body, and then it gets transmitted to the axon, which is right here, which goes away from the cell body. Once that electrical signal reaches the terminal will then release neurotransmitters onto the next neuron. And you can see with this green neuron, the neurotransmitters go to the dendrite, and the whole process starts over again. So this is how our neurons communicate using electrical signals. Oh, okay. I guess I had this animated. Okay. Neurons are called excitable cells. And what this means is that their activity is related to the flow of electricity. Now, I want to define a couple of things for you. Electrical potential energy is the result of it results from an electric field due to charge separation. So if you separate positive and negative charges, an electrical field is going to result, and there's electrical potential energy. Voltage is the measure of electrical potential energy, and we measure it in volts. So if you separate two charges, an electrical potential is going to form, and we measure that in voltage. And so if I were to take a positively charged particle and put it in this electric field, the positive charge is going to be repelled by the other positive and attracted to the negative, and so it's going to move towards the negative charge. Now this is going to be important because at rest, the inside of a neuronal membrane is negative compared to the outside. So an electrical potential forms. There's an electrical potential energy between the inside and the outside of a neuronal cell membrane, where the inside is negative and the outside is positive. In addition, we've been talking about this, the concentration of sodium outside the cell is high, whereas it's low on the inside. And the concentration of potassium is high on the inside and low on the outside. All of this is going to contribute to the electrical potential that forms, and it's going to be important when we talk about action potentials in the future. So just to summarize, neurons use electrical signals to communicate with each other and other target tissues. The major structural features of neurons that we discussed are the cell body, dendrites, axons, and axon terminals. And the neuronal cell membranes have an electrical potential where the inside is negative compared to the outside.